Hey, good morning. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman, and it's time for another Ask Me Anything. This is your chance to shoot me those questions that have just been bugging you about the landscape and garden. Um, you're always welcome to ask me questions about things that I'm growing in the garden, which I freely tell everybody about with our daily doses, and I hope you're watching our daily doses of hort. I do have to tell you, we had Southern Gardening TV crew here for TV segments this week, and today's daily dose is actually kind of a fun one. It has nothing to do with plants. It has everything to do with a snake rescue, and you'll just have to watch the video of how we dropped everything Southern Gardening to rescue a snake that was in distress. So it was a good video. It kind of creeped me out just a little bit, just to let you know. But we did a good deed yesterday. So check that out. Other things that are going on, gosh, it's hot now. Um, it seems like everything's starting to wilt a lot quicker. And I mean, that's just the nature of the game with, we get these high temperatures on the coast. We get this high humidity and the plants can't transpire. And so the water can't move into the plants so they will. So you have to be careful, in this time of year that you see wilting plants and you think that you have to water more. You really kind of have to check either the soil moisture, or you have to check the moisture in the containers and to see if they are actually dry, or if it's just a wilt caused by the temps and humidity. That's just something else to keep track of, right? Because the garden isn't always simple. So we had a bunch of questions this week, and I don't know if you've been watching the daily doses. Over the weekend, I was doing an update on our micro tomatoes. The little itty bitty plants. They're only like this big, but produce just loads of tomatoes. And we were out there, and there was there was in past tense, quite an infestation of, I called them pinworms. I did a little bit of research after the fact, and identified these little worms as yellow striped army worms. But I just thought it was very interesting. These little itty bitty worms. They were quarter inch, half inch long. So we had these little tiny worms on my little tiny tomatoes instead of the big tomato hornworms. But we went out there and went ahead and treated those and got rid of them before the rain on Sunday. And we used a product, and it's a product that I always use, called spinosad. It's actually an organic insecticide that works very well on the caterpillars, those type of pests, leaf miners. It works well on, but it's actually inorganic that works well. It's a bacterial fermentation. This is just, and I'm trying to get a good shot of it. It's made by several different brands. Bonide makes it. There are the one I like is Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew. I just like the name. But spinosad, this happens to be Natural Guard by Fertilome. Get this at independent garden centers, independent feed stores, and the like. I've seen it every once in a while in the big box stores, but you can't count on it. But your independents will carry this, and it is very effective. It works the same. It's really the same range of pests as BT, which is another organic. But the spinosad has about a 14 to 21 day longevity of effectiveness versus the BT, which breaks down pretty quickly in sunlight. So you don't have to apply the spinosad as often as you would the BT. So that's kind of an update on the tomato worms that we had. I had some questions this week. One referred back to the tomato seed saving that we did as a daily dose, and I showed everybody how we keep the tomato flowers protected from cross pollination, and then how we go ahead and separate the seeds out of the fruit to save, and they end up in little pill bottles like this. But the question was, so once it's dry, once they're saved and dry and they're put in the bottle, can you store these at room temperature? And my quick answer is yes. You can put them in the fridge or in the freezer. I don't. I store all my seeds at room temperature, stable temperature. We don't want to see a lot of temperature fluctuations, but stable temperature, out of direct sunlight, and we get really good longevity as far as viability of the seed. I've got some of my heirloom seeds that I planted this year were back from 2012, and they germinated just fine. So look, we're looking at least 8 or 9 years stored, dry, stored out of direct sunlight at stable temperatures. So that's one thing that we can always do. Another question that I had came in from the daily dose that we did on the Vermilion Air Cupia. That is a plant. It's a Mississippi Medallion winner from, I want to say 2015, 2016. But it has been a fantastic pollinator attractor in garden for years. And it has shown great, I want to say, longevity in the garden. It has proven to be a perennial for me here on the coast. The Vermilion Air Cupia will flower with kind of like the little, they call it cigar plant, with the little red and yellow flowers. They're about an inch long from middle of May all the way to frost. And I've talked to folks in the past about, they didn't want to buy it because it says it's perennial, but it isn't perennial where they're at. And I'm thinking that if you get a flowering plant that blooms from May all the way through to October, does it really matter that it's a perennial? Why not grow it as an annual and just buy it every year? Part of that is I think it's an easier way to go about looking at flowering plants. Now that you support the industry. But the question I had with that is, a lot of times the plants I talk about, some homeowners have problems. Oh no, I have to change something here. Have problems finding some of the plants I talk about. And yeah, I agree that can be an issue. I mean, when we look at Mississippi, and the plant dealers, there's about 400 businesses in Mississippi that sell landscape plants. And I can't know exactly who has what in their inventory. So I show plants that I find, at my local garden centers and nurseries. And the easiest thing to do is, if you're really interested in a particular plant, call your independent garden center. Say, look, I really want to get this plant. And I'll bet you 9 times out of 10, they'll be able to source that plant for you and find it for you. The independent garden centers also, if you tell them, like, next year, we'd like to see, things like, whatever you're interested in, chances are they're going to find material for you. They have that flexibility versus the big box stores where there's some person in a 35th floor windowless apartment ordering for 150 stores. So always look at the go local. And oh my gosh, we've got some questions coming in. So let's go ahead and start here before I go through my whole list. And Meg is asking, I found a few Japanese beetles eating my plants this week. You know, the shiny bronze colored metallic ones. They're defoliating my roses, eating my petunia flowers. What can I do about it? Um, Japanese beetles, you can look at that in a couple of different ways. They're very susceptible to using a contact insecticide. You could use something like Sevin, you could use malathion on them. Those could also impact pollinators. So we have to be careful with using some of these products. And a lot of times it's, you know, if you want to spray the plants late in the day, most of the pollinators aren't flying at that time, and the beetles are gonna still be there. You could knock them off with a stream of water. You could use insecticidal soaps on them. But yeah, but you don't want to just let them be. You've got to do something to disrupt that feeding cycle. And seriously, this is a opportunity or an instance where, yeah, you really need to use an insecticide and take care of the problem. So hope that helps, Megan. And then with the next question we have down here. Okay, let's see. How much and what exactly should I put in my soil to change my hydrangea from blue to purple? I don't have a soil test kit. Well, good question. It's not adding products to change, because when you need to change the pH of the soil. So knowing exactly how much to add, if you're going to go, you want to go from, I got to read this, from blue to purple. So when we look at our hydrangeas, and we're talking about the macrophylla, the French hydrangea is one of the hydrangeas you can change the color. It doesn't work on all of them. The blue color is a product of having an acid pH, a low pH in your soil. And so you want to change it to purple. So you need to get it to a more neutral pH. And that's where you get that purplish color. To tell you the truth, you really need a soil test. I know that there are folks out there who'll say, just put this much of something in the soil and you're good to go. I really am a believer in at least getting a baseline of your soil pH, and you really need to do that. But you're going to want to be raising the pH, so you're going to want to be adding lime to it. How much? That's where the soil pH will help. Will it change color this year? Probably not. When you're looking at changing the soil pH under a shrub like that, it's not an instantaneous process. It's one that's going to take a little bit of time. But if you were to start this year, and if you want to say neutralizing the soil or making it more alkaline, now's a great time to do it and work on that. And then I think you'll have a better chance of changing those colors next year rather than this year. But I would definitely go ahead and get a soil test done at least this year, and see exactly where you're at. And let's see here. And Ellen has posted information on what you need to do to get the soil tested. A lot of it now is all online, where you can pay for the test, send it in, without even having to go to our extension offices. Though we really do want you to come to the extension office, because everybody's nice folks, and we do want to help with that. But you can do it all online if you want to. And then here's my friend Chris Dews. Morning, Chris. Glad you could join us this morning. Usually, you hear me on Saturday mornings with Ron Wilson talking about the garden, but we're glad to have you here on a Friday morning. Okay, so Judy has a question that I have a very wet spot, about 10 by 10 at the side of my yard. And I've put a French screen in. It didn't help much. I'd like to just plant it out so I don't have to mess with the soggy grass. Any suggestions? Well, usually when you do have a wet spot, in your yard, it doesn't drain. A French drain does a usually does a fantastic job. And if you're not familiar with what a French drain is, it's actually, well, it's a drain that's installed, and a lot of times it can be under the ground, or a lot of times it can be a trench that's filled in, even with the soil. But it could have a 4-inch corrugated pipe. It could have a 6-inch, depending on how much water. And it's just a way to let the water in that area get into the pipe to be carried out, and deposited someplace else. Sometimes they don't work. Usually they don't work is because they're not graded correctly. They don't have enough fall on the grade, and so there's not enough, tilting downward. Elevation change, is that the word I'm thinking? I'm not using the right word, but there's not enough change in the level of the ground to move that water out. So you want to go ahead and plant it out so you don't have a soggy mess. Well, what you've really got to do is you've got to take a look look for plants that will tolerate that soggy soil. One that I really like, and I don't know if it would be appropriate, in your location, is Virginia Sweetspire, ITEA. Really likes a soggy root system, and will grow well, and will actually it's used in bank placements to keep banks from eroding because of the root system. This is a good a good problem to go to your independent garden center and see what they have available and what they can get you. If you want to send me that question, Judy, to my email, that's and you send it to southerngardening@msstate.edu. I will look up some information for that and send you some more information than I can give you here this morning, if that would be okay. And then we have Debbie here. What's some suggestions for container or 5-gallon bucket tomatoes? Now, Debbie, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you mean variety of tomato to put in that 5-gallon bucket? Because really, I'll tell you that from my experience, it really doesn't matter, which tomato you grow in those buckets. It's going to be fine, because they're going to enjoy that consistently moist root system, and will will grow well. Okay, and Debbie says yes, sir. One thing, if I were to recommend a type of tomato, I would say go with a determinate tomato. And a determinate tomato is, if you want to call them, sometimes they're called bush tomatoes. And they're genetically programmed to only grow 4 to 6 feet tall. And in a 5-gallon bucket, that is totally doable to keep it from tipping over. You get into an indeterminate, which can actually be a pretty big tomato. That 5-gallon bucket is going to get top heavy, and it's going to fall over. And so you want to stick with the smaller stature tomatoes, and you'll be fine with that. I'm going to have to show on a daily dose here, because we have been growing 2-gallon buckets using that grow bucket system, and it's worked out really well. I'll have to do record a daily dose this weekend and update everybody on that. But that's something that I would do. Okay, let's see here. Let me go back through these questions again. Okay, and so Meg's back. Thanks for mentioning how to source specific trees, because I want a specific Camellia japonica. Yeah, if you want to get a specific camellia, yeah, go to your independent garden center. Make friends with them, because they will help you out and try and find you that specific camellia that you want. And we've got a lot of good mornings. We've got Cody's on here. Good morning, sir. Cody's my back fence next door neighbor here. Let's see. Good morning. Okay, from Robin. How often do you treat for dollar weed? Just can't get rid of it in my garden. Yeah, dollar weed is a pain, isn't it? Now, when you say it's in your garden, are you talking vegetable garden, or are you talking, the flower garden? When it's out in the lawn, we can treat that pretty effectively using, something like weed free zone or ortho weed be gone, and we can work on it there. But when we get it in the flower beds or in the vegetable garden especially, because if we really can't use, like weed free zone or the weed be gone because it's not labeled for use with the edible crops. Um, a lot of times, if it's in the vegetable garden, Roundup is the go-to on that. And you can go ahead and, if it's not a heavy infestation, you could paint it on. I don't like to go spraying Roundup in the vegetable garden, just because it can impact, growth of your vegetables if it drifts a little bit. But painting it on can be effective. Um, I wouldn't use the vinegar Dawn, salt. That's really not what's going to be effective. Yeah, you'll burn those leaves off, but what'll happen with dollarweed is it will sprout even more leaf growth, foliage growth, and I think you end up with a bigger problem. So that's a case where you really need to use the right product and take care of that problem. But if that's, Robin, if that's really not what you're looking for, send me the email to that email address, southerngardening@msstate.edu, and I'll help you out a little more with that. So we got Alice, happy Friday. Kathy Ledbetter loves her grow buckets. That has, I'm really happy to hear that, because I think the grow bucket system is really a game changer. And I think I've said that on the daily doses. And just so you know, Kathy won the door prize last month's Ask Me Anything, and she got a really nice Dram spray and stream hose attachment for her garden use. And we do have a giveaway today. Just not going to tell you about it quite yet. You got to wait till the end to see what we're doing here. Okay, so now Mary Ann asked, how often can you put calcium nitrate on tomatoes? We use calcium nitrate, pardon me. We use calcium nitrate. Ooh, there was the burp. I hope I didn't gross everybody out. We use calcium nitrate as a thing for tomato growth, for vegetable growth in the summertime. Calcium nitrate provides some readily available nitrogen and readily available calcium at times when our warm season vegetables are really needing extra nutrients. If you've got the tomatoes in the ground, MSU Extension will say a tablespoon around the plant once a month. If you're growing in the earth boxes, like I do, we can do the calcium nitrate. We can add a teaspoon right into the reservoir of the earth box about every 7 to 10 days, and that recommendation would work for the grow buckets also. And that just keeps readily available nutrients there for the plant. So that would be kind of the timing, either in ground or in a container type of thing. Now Judy asks, how do you treat early blight in tomatoes? Well, here's the thing, Judy, I don't. Um, here in Mississippi, and especially in South Mississippi, you have to tell me where you're at, okay? But here on the coast, we get every leaf disease known to mankind. And I tried to keep up with it years ago, and I finally got to the point is, I'm really not going to fight it. And that kind of helped with my growing strategy of having a spring crop where I grow tomatoes from late March to 4th of July. And then, once we get to 4th of July, I'm going to pull those plants out because it's too hot. They're not going to be producing tomatoes. And I'd rather have plants producing tomatoes. I'll start a new set of seeds and then mid-August plant the fall crop. So I kind of just get out of that trying to treat the leaf diseases. Early blight. Now I will tell you that it seems everybody wants to talk about, hey, I've got the blight on my tomatoes, and we assume they're early blight, late blight, and all the other blights that people can look up on the internet. What I do is when I see affected leaves, especially earlier in the year, I just go ahead and I clip them off. Just remove them from the garden, just get them out of there. Because really, once you get some of these, now this is just my take on it, okay? Once you start getting these diseases, you can't catch up to it. It's almost has to be more of a, let's get the fungicides out there ahead of time. And that's, you get into calendar spraying then, and your timing's not right. And I've just taken the stance on growing tomatoes that I'm just not going to worry about it. And for the past couple years, I haven't sprayed any insecticides except for the spinosad when we do see some of the caterpillar type of insects. But I haven't sprayed for stink bugs or leaf-footed bugs because I'm kind of growing around the seasons where they're most active. Yeah. Okay. So Judy, you're in Northwest Mississippi. Little bit of a different situation than we are here on the coast. If you wanted to go ahead and I would remove effective foliage, but if you want to go ahead and put a fungicide out, consider something like chlorothalonil, Daconil. It's an old fungicide, but it's an effective contact fungicide. So that could help you out with that. So I hope that helps. Okay, let's see here. I have totally lost where I'm at. Okay, listen, here's my friend Gail. Bought a sassafras tree, and now hearing they don't grow well in this area, Hammond, because of the clay soil. Any suggestions? Gail, is this did you just buy it? Because if you've just done it, you could go ahead and I would dig that that $100 hole, okay, and amend that soil with some nice organic matter, soil conditioner, and do it that way. Or I'd consider, depending on where what you want to do with it, I'd consider putting it in a big container. Now I'm a container guy. I have all of my trees are in 25-gallon containers. Might not fit with with the way that you wanna use it, but that's always a suggestion, and that takes that let's face it, takes that crappy soil out of the equation, and you can grow it in some good container mix. So that's just something to think about. Okay, so Sue's asking, snap beans look finished. Should I pull and replant, or is it too hot? I would say if your beans are finished for the year, I wouldn't replant. I would wait until cooler weather again in the fall. It's just going to get too hot. I would keep the pole beans going as long as you're happy with the production. Keep those going. It's still not too late if you haven't planted any pickles, any pickling cucumbers. You can plant those all the way up into past 4th of July and get pickling cucumbers growing. So that's a suggestion, but I wouldn't replant snap beans right now. It's just going to get too hot. Okay, so Kathy is asking, would granular lime be added often to the grow buckets? Okay. When we're growing vegetables in either the grow buckets or the earth boxes or just a regular container in potting mix, yeah, we have to add lime to that. That's just it's a growing mix. That's something it's going to be deficient always. And so every time I replant in my containers, I'm always adding dolomite. I don't worry about the pH. The pH never gets out of whack. It's just that the materials that you're growing in tend to be more acidic. And I add dolomite, and I use granular. Yeah, you can use the pulverized, but then you're in a cloud. The granular works just fine. So. Okay, let's see here. What other question? God, we've got a bunch of folks asking questions this morning. So Sue's asking, love put the suggestion of putting labels on the rings. Went right to it to see what varieties I had planted. In case you're not familiar with what Sue is talking about, it was earlier this year, I think. It was last year for sure. I shared an idea that we saw online on social media, because you always think that you're going to remember what you plant out in the garden. Yeah, but you don't. I don't. And I saw this idea where we take the plant tags and punch a hole in them and then put them like on a key ring. And then you can hang up like, here's the plants I planted in the springtime. Here's the plants I planted in the summer. And you can go right to that little collection you've got and know exactly, what you planted. And so, you don't have to remember because you've got that tool, reminding you. Yeah, that was a tremendous tip. I still use it, and I'm Sue, and I'm glad that you're using it, that you're using it too, because it is pretty good. Now here from Sharon, what fertilizer do you recommend for hydrangeas that are not blooming? So question for you: the hydrangeas that are not blooming, are they the ones that the French that bloom early in the spring, or are they the paniculata type that bloom later in the spring? Because really, to be honest, the fertilizer is not going to make your hydrangeas bloom. The fertilizer keeps the nutrition up, keeps the plants growing well, but I have never bought into this is fertilizer that promotes flowering, because so they bloom early. If I were to guess, the early blooming hydrangeas are hydrangeas that form their flower buds the previous year. And so I'm really kind of thinking that, we had a really tough winter. And Sharon, I have to remember where you're in South Carolina. I think a lot of our hydrangeas were affected by the cold weather that we had in the wintertime, and actually can kill some of the flower buds and stop that. Oh, Central, I'm sorry, I confused you with somebody else. I'm still going to stick with the cold weather. Central Mississippi had definitely more cold weather than we had on the coast. And the cold weather really helped some of our flowering, landscape plants. Others, it didn't do any good at all to them. And I would bet that this year that was the problem if they bloomed in the past like they should have. Okay, let's see here. So from Ronnie Holder, second year I've been wrecked by squash vine borers in my zucchini. How do I get rid of the little devils? I pick the eggs off daily. Okay, Ronnie. I have been plagued by vine borers ever since moving to Mississippi. And I'll tell you how I solved the problem. I stopped growing zucchini. It didn't matter if I planted late, if I planted early, if I multiple plantings, I always got those vine borers. And I just decided that, you want to know something? Everybody's got zucchini at the farmer's market. And if I want zucchini, I'll just go to somebody who's actually growing it. I would rather grow it myself, but it's just one of those crops I have a problem with. Yeah, yeah, I know. And I'll tell you, I got to that point. So I mean that's what I can do. Yeah, you can go out there and you can pick the eggs off. You can, I've seen recommendations where you wrap the stems in foil. There's some products out there they're like clay materials that you can spray on vegetables, and squash like that. That form a protective barrier around the stems. And that just seems like way too much work. I mean, I don't want to work that hard in the garden, so I'll let somebody else grow my zucchini. Okay, let's see here. What other kind? What's now from Nani? What kind of soil is best for citrus trees? Great question. Um, if you're growing in ground, I would take the advice that I gave Gail with her sassafras. You know, big hole, not a deep hole, but big hole. Amend that with organic matter, with the native soil, and go from there. Me, I grow all my citrus in 15 and 25 gallon containers. So I take that soil out of the mix, and then in the containers I use a mix of the Jolly Gardener potting mix. Here, let me just Jolly Gardener, and I mix that with either the pine bark soil conditioner or the small pine chips, and make a potting mix that way, and put them in the big containers, and they grow just fine that way. That I would rather do that. That's a little more work than growing in ground, I think, but I think I get better results that way, and I think you could get better results too than being in the ground. But that's what I grow my citrus in. Okay, let's see here. Oh my gosh, I have run through all the questions. That's fantastic. I'm about wore out right now. But I've got a couple of other questions here that people. Oh, sorry. See, Dickie, I'm looking for a lantana other than gold that doesn't grow very big. Okay, let's see. Did I miss that, Ellen? Sorry about that if I missed that question. Um, so you're looking for a lantana other than gold. Check out the Luscious series. Luscious lantanas, I just love that name. But Luscious lantanas are tend to be a more compact lantana, every color combination that you can imagine, and they grow great here in Mississippi. Had great trial results, both at State, at Poplarville, at Crystal Springs, and my home garden. So the Luscious series. You could also look at the Lucky series, and there's a whole bunch of different colors other than gold available there too. So check those out at your independent garden center. Oh, and then Ellen's put up a great article on lantana. I wonder who wrote that. Anyways, there are some ideas there. Okay, let's see here. Let's go through here. From Shelley, we have had trouble growing trees, lacebark elm, in the clay soil, even though they were sold to us at trees that will thrive in that sticky red poured draining slop. Yeah. The grower tells us not to amend the soil, so we don't. They keep dying. Let me tell you, I think you really should amend the soil on that. Yeah, I think something like a lacebark elm should be planted in ground, not in containers. But I would that big that $5 plant, dig that $25 hole, big and wide, not very deep, only as deep as the container the tree's grown in, and amend that with organic matter. And a lot of times our trees struggle in our our clayey slop because the soil just doesn't drain well. And a lot of times the damage occurs in the wintertime where it's cool and moist all the time, and that's just hard on some of our landscape plants. So I would go back, because that's a great tree. Just go ahead and amend the soil. And let's see here. And if the grower questions that, just tell them I told you to do that, and everything will be fine. Okay. So let's see here. So Tom Withers, do you believe bloom set works? Now, I'm assuming you're talking about the product for tomatoes. And those products tend to be a calcium chloride. A lot of times they're marketed as blossom end rot stop or blossom rot stop, something like that. I don't think they work. If they're calcium products, the plant, but the calcium isn't translocated. The plant moves calcium through the plant that's taken up in the root system. And so, if you want to make sure that your tomatoes have plenty of it's got to be, that dolomite amendment. It's adding the calcium nitrate that then is taken up by the roots. I just don't believe that those blossom set products work. That's just my opinion. I've talked to people that swear by it. I just don't think you need to go that route. Okay, let's see here. What else we got? Okay, maybe we got to the end of that. One of the questions that I had this week when we were, from a daily dose, was when we were talking about the wheat. And that's it's kind of funny that I grow wheat and I grow other grains in our landscape as ornamental grasses. And then so the question was, so what do I do with the wheat? Well, we were it's funny. We just did a Southern Gardening TV segment that's going to air next month on us growing wheat here at the Urban Nano Farm. And what we plan on doing with it is we've harvested all the wheat seeds out of it. Now I have to figure out how to grind it. And I don't know if I can just grind it in the food processor, or if I have to get a grain grinder. Would that just be a terrible thing if I bought another tool, right, to do the job? I don't think it'd be a problem at all. But I would just like to have some biscuits that I grew. I think that'd just be a cool thing to do. Or a loaf of bread, homegrown at the Urban Nano Farm. I mean, why not, right? So that's kind of the reason I grow the grains, to learn how to do it. It's part of the, if you want to call it, the foodscape. I was going to do rice this year, but I think I'm kind of late on the rice, so maybe that's next year. But we'll be planting more grains this fall. We'll be doing some oats and doing some rye, and we'll see how that goes. But it's just kind of a fun thing to do. My neighbors kind of think that I have to get out and weed my garden sometimes because there's all this brown weed out there. And I have to remind everybody, no, that's actually, I want it to grow there. So please don't pull the weeds in my yard. Now, let's see here. Okay, so Tom, get back to some of these questions. I have laying hens, so I put fine crushed eggshells in my tomato holes for calcium. Sorry, I had a phone call coming in. How about that? Yeah, putting the fine eggshells in the tomato holes, yes, that works. That works great. That's a long-term project. So as long as you do it every year, that's a great way to add calcium to the soil. It's not a quick fix though, because the eggshells takes more to break those down than it does the dolomite that you add. But fantastic source of calcium. Then Kathy Ledbetter, what channel is Southern Gardening TV on? We're only on broadcast TV in a couple of markets in the state, WLOX for one. They're usually at the end of the 6 o'clock newscast on Saturday, unless there's football going on. It's also part of the Mississippi State Extension Farm Week, which is on Mississippi Public Broadcasting. And it's also on our Mississippi State Extension YouTube channel. So you can see all those. Ellen, when she remembers, and I'm just funning with you, Ellen, we'll post those on our Facebook and our Instagram page too. So those TV products are available, in multiple ways to go ahead and watch those. Oh yeah, and here we go. Ellen's on the ball. Put the link up to our YouTube page. Fantastic. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, and so Marilyn asks, I joined a community garden where I've planted tomatoes in the ground. Usually use earth boxes at home. Everybody here is getting flea beetles on their tomatoes. What do we do? Oh, flea beetles are tough. I have to remember product-wise what you could use. Some of the easiest flea beetle protection is just exclusion using row cover is one way to do it. Marilyn, if you'll send me an email to southerngardening@msstate.edu, I will get you a answer on that, and we'll post that here also in the comments after we get done. I just don't remember the product right offhand of taking care of the flea beetles. So with that, what are we doing? Yeah, we're at 47 minutes now. I think that's about. I'm about done for the morning if nobody minds. And yeah, Dickie and Ellen is on point. There's no doubt about it. Now, I promised a giveaway. What we're giving away today is a set. And I'm trying to get this in the camera. It's all backwards on me. Is a set of little herb planters for your windowsill. These are complements of Buzzy, and we've got oregano and chives and basil and thyme. And in order to be considered in a random draw for these little planters, I want you in the comments to say, what garden project are you going to do this weekend? I want to see what everybody's doing in the garden, because it's supposed to be a good weekend. So let's get out in the garden and have some fun. So with that, oh, Debbie, thank you very much. Appreciate that. With that, I'm going to say adios. Thanks for hanging out with us here this morning. Be sure to share Southern Gardening with your friends. Help us grow Southern Gardening Nation. We're up almost to 11. I think we're over 11,000 followers now, which is just it's just fantastic that we have that many people following Southern Gardening. You can follow us on Instagram, and if you TikTok, believe it or not, we have Southern Gardening on TikTok. We posted our first one yesterday. There's going to be no crazy stuff. It's going to be all good gardening information. Trust me on that. So with that, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time. Be sure to watch the daily doses that come out on an almost daily basis. So we shall see you later. Thanks, guys.